Welcome to a Wise Retirement Podcast. We believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Guiding you to financial freedom today is my co-host, attorney Brian Smith from Moore Ingram Johnson Steele.
Good morning.
Hey, Brian. Good morning. So today we are going to talk about estate planning for those who travel frequently or live in multiple states.
Okay.
Now, this is your first time on the podcast, so welcome.
Well, thank you.
And we've had Sean a few episodes ago come and talk about estate planning. So you guys kind of work together on the estate
Sean
front.
and I, we work hand in hand on the estate front. Yeah.
So thank you again for being such great service to our clients.
Absolutely.
We
thank
have
you for
a couple of firms
us.
that we work with, but certainly I think you guys get the bulk of the wires at work. So we appreciate the
thank you.
prompt responses and dealing with sometimes difficult personalities. I think we've had a few ourselves.
Not everyone's easy.
Exactly. Okay. So, I don't know. I feel like we have like a travel theme this quarter. We've had the retirement travelers on. These are people that have retired. They sold everything. They literally everything they own's in the backpack.
They become nomads.
And they've been to 147 countries. Now, when I talk to them off the podcast, I think they're actually in country maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year. Their podcasts or their videos that make it seem like they're just always gone. But they raised 5 children, and then they left. And so you start thinking about that, and I go, my financial nerd brain immediately goes, my gosh, like, what if you have major medical issues? Like, what forms do you give them? Do they take the power of attorney medical directives in India or in Europe?
There's some tricky issues there.
So when we start there, let's say you're just a frequent traveler.
Yeah.
What should we be carrying or not carrying with us?
I think the main 2 documents to have with you when you're traveling around are a power of attorney and an advance directive of some sort for healthcare, living will, power of attorney for healthcare. One of those documents. Typically, you're going to make those documents in your domicile jurisdiction. So
Meaning where you live.
Yeah, if your folks live here in Georgia, they're going to make the documents and they're going to be consistent with Georgia law. And it's a good idea to have those documents with you. A lot of folks will save them on their phones. I was about to say, you just have a digital version. Yeah, you have a digital version. A lot of people will put their healthcare directives on My Chart or something like that with their primary care physician so that it's always there. It's available. It's in the cloud, I guess.
Right.
So they can always access it wherever they are. They're in Dubai. It's available to them. But those 2 documents are good to have. But then you have to think about whether or not that document will even be recognized in that other jurisdiction. And to some extent, you're just kind of rolling the dice and hoping that it'll work. With powers of attorney for business and financial, there's been sort of a push the last few years to make those a little bit more uniform.
Okay.
From jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
You mean across states or across countries?
Across states, not necessarily across countries. But to be honest, I can't imagine what a foreign jurisdiction would want to see in a business or financial power of attorney that we don't cover.
True.
In our power of attorney here. So it's pretty thorough. Of course, there's going to be language issues and things of that sort, but we can't really convert all of our documents to whatever foreign language
as far as
traveling
the
to.
Medical community goes. They're going to render aid. No one's not going to render aid because you didn't have a document. I mean, they all take the same oath.
Right. I think they're all going to err on the side of caution and try to take care of you
right.
In another jurisdiction. And I'll be honest, I've seen a lot of different healthcare directives and medical proxies and so forth. I'm a big fan of Georgia's advance directive for healthcare. I think it's very thorough. It's very easy to understand and execute. It doesn't venture out into sort of the periphery at all. It's just a very good document. And again, like I was saying with the power of attorney, I think it'd be hard to decline that document anywhere. It gives someone the power to take care of you and make those decisions. Now, every culture is going to have different beliefs and so forth when it comes to end of life decisions.
Right.
So that may be where you run into some issues. But as far as just the basic care, I get hit by a bus in London because I looked the wrong way stepping off the sidewalk. Somebody's going to be able to take care of me with that document.
Are you curious why annuities keep coming up as a potential investment option? People are often told that annuities can effectively mitigate investment risks and help secure their financial future. However, annuities often benefit the salesperson and might not be the best choice for you as a consumer. To learn more about the various types of annuities, the negatives of owning them, and better investment alternatives, we have a free ebook on our website just for you. To download our ebook, Buyer Beware, Why Do They Keep Trying to Sell You That Annuity? Simply click the link in the episode notes or visit wiserinvestor.com/guides. Now let's get back to the episode.
Now, just to be clear, if you can communicate your wishes, you don't need these documents.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. If you're able to communicate, they're asking you.
Right.
So really, yeah, we're talking about, I got hit by a bus and I can't communicate. Then who's taking care of me? And then you have to think about who you're giving those powers to also. Is it somebody else who's in your travel party, or is it somebody back home?
Right.
So making sure that the right people have copies of those documents and that they know you're traveling, and that everyone's aware of your whereabouts.
So it's okay to have someone back home, not necessarily someone named in your travel party.
Sure. Nowadays we can do pretty much anything from anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that's perfectly fine.
And then a power of attorney is really more for financial. So I see less need for use of that.
Yeah. It'd be more important for something that happens back home. So I'm overseas and I don't know, the pipes bust in my house because it got really cold. Probably saw that a lot this past Christmas.
Right.
Pipes were bursting all over the place. I need somebody to be able to step in and hire the contractor and come in and fix my house so I don't come home to a frozen flood.
Right.
So having the power of attorney is definitely more important for that. Something goes on back home and I need to tend to it. I see a lot of folks who, as you were talking about, people who travel frequently, they sort of leave their lives here behind and hit the road. Business and financial affairs don't change. A lot of those folks own rental properties. They may still have business interests and so forth. So somebody's got to be able to take care of issues that come up while you're out there traveling.
And again, those two documents are for while you're living. If you pass away, those don't have any merit anymore.
They're pretty much useless at that point in time.
Yeah.
So it's always important to make sure you have a good will in place. And with folks who travel a lot, especially if they own property in other jurisdictions, so they've got a condo here, a house there, a ranch over there, revocable living trusts become a must because you want to avoid probate in multiple jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Simplify the administration. You don't want big gaps in time between death and someone's ability to take care of things, because as you were saying, power of attorney stops the moment you die.
Yep. And
then no one really has power to do anything until there's some document that gives them that authority. With a revocable living trust, it's instant. With just a will, it's when the probate court says, congratulations, Casey, you're the executor.
Right.
Go out and do everything. So we want to avoid that gap in time.
So if you live in Georgia, you have a house in Alabama. So if you probate here, then you would do like what's it called? A remote probate or
ancillary probate.
Ancillary probate. So you'd be probating in two states.
Probating in two states. And that can be a little bit tricky. I'm actually handling on a state right now for a family member who passed away. And we're going through probate in Florida, is where he was domiciled, but also in Pennsylvania, Utah, and New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
It's a pain in the neck.
Yeah. So if you had a revocable living trust and those assets were titled in the revocable living trust,
that's exactly right.
Then you wouldn't have to do probate at all.
No, that's right. Because a successor trustee steps into place. Successor beneficiaries sort of rise up in the document. Mm-hmm. The powers are all there for that successor trustee to step in and start taking care of everything immediately. And you don't miss a beat from a asset management standpoint.
Right.
The family misses you, but the
things
assets,
keep going.
Things keep going. Yeah. And we're not having to wait for a probate process in Florida, which is an absolute nightmare, to be settled. So
is it a nightmare because of the time it takes to settle it, or is it just a lengthy? Because isn't that the state that they want to charge a percentage of your estate.
Florida's a unique state when it comes to probate, and we think of Florida, and a lot of people are moving to Florida and they're retiring there and taking their assets there, and then a lot of assets are changing hands in the state of Florida at death.
Right.
So there's really never been any incentive in the Florida legislature to make the probate process easy. It's an industry down there. They're making a lot of money. There's statutory fees that are charged by attorneys. There's a lot of filings that are required to be made that cannot be waived. Here in Georgia, probate's a piece of cake. It's just a really easy process, and it's because the laws are easy and the procedure's easy. Florida's made it very difficult, and there's other states like that around the country. You hit on a couple before. California is difficult. Utah is difficult. Texas is not easy. Most of the Southeast is pretty easy, with the exception of Florida. Louisiana is difficult because they follow the French civil law and Napoleonic code, where the rest of the country follows the common law, British common law. But otherwise, if you've got the property in Alabama, you've got the property in Georgia, you live here in Georgia, a good revocable living trust, having that Alabama property titled in the trust at the time of death, eliminates the need for Alabama probate or Florida probate or Utah or California or Texas or wherever.
So that makes estate settling a lot easier. What about foreign assets?
Foreign assets are a little bit tricky because it's no guarantee that our documents are going to be honored overseas. What I've seen a lot of folks do is multiple wills.
Okay.
And have a will that governs your Georgia assets or your domestic assets, but make sure in that document that will does not specifically revoke this other will that you've created in South Africa or somewhere like that. Mm-hmm. And then have some foreign version of me create a new will for you in that jurisdiction that deals with those assets. And so that's one way to do it. There are treaties and conventions and so forth that have been entered into over the years that do lend some acceptance of documents to foreign wills and trusts and so
Same
forth.
for the tax code as well.
Exactly. And so it's still, though, a good idea to make sure that the documents are going to be effective. Like I was saying with Louisiana, they follow the civil law where we follow the common law. And it's that way around the world as well. There's a lot of countries out there that have things like forced heirship, not like a blimp, but the people who inherit. So there's sort of automatic inheritance with certain family members that sort of overrides the terms of your last will and testament. And so you want to make sure that if you have assets in one of those jurisdictions, that you've got documents in place that'll accommodate your wishes.
Yeah, I would think that gets even more complicated if you're renting a foreign property, which some of our clients do, like in a VRBO, but foreign, where you not only do you need to have wills, but you probably want to have power of attorney even for somebody local on the ground.
You probably do. And then you're also bringing into play liability issues.
Yeah, that's right.
And so forth. So do you want to set up some sort of limited liability entity? And then what options are available to you in that foreign country? Yeah. So it definitely gets tricky. And there's a lot of planning that goes into it. So, it's one of those adventures that you should not enter into lightly. If you're thinking of buying property in the Caribbean or somewhere else, talk to your attorney first.
What happens? We have a sad case where a FedEx pilot passed away on an overnight in Germany. Mm-hmm. And, in that scenario, what can be done to help your family ease through that process? Because I feel like I've only known this happening twice, but in both times, it required like a congressperson to get involved.
Yeah,
to get the body home.
I've had it happen several times. One was a lady who was with a tour group in Greenland. I've had it happen actually a couple of times with folks on cruise ships. We just sort of wind up at the next port of call. And how do you get the remains home? The State Department is pretty helpful in that regard. So typically what happens, the family needs to contact the consular office wherever the remains are, Germany or England or what have you. And then they'll sort of coordinate with the local funeral home, mortuary folks, to get your body transferred back to the United States. It's not cheap by any means. I tell folks all the time, consider travel insurance, because a lot of those policies will include repatriation of remains in the policy, so they can get the body back home for you. There's going to be a gap in time. It's going to be tricky. There's going to be a delay in getting death certificates. So starting that next process back at home, the probate process and so forth, can be delayed significantly. So again, it comes back to the Revocable Living Trust. If you're a pilot, you're traveling overseas a lot, and there's a concern that something might happen outside of the U.S., then having documents that are going to work efficiently for you is key. Yeah, absolutely. So try to bring it back to something less sad. What would you say to people who travel with nothing? Because, so many people, I've always had some kind of a basic estate planning, but you don't think about those stuff, even when you're young. Yeah. You don't really think about the risk. Yeah. I tell folks all the time, I think the two most important documents in an estate plan are the two simplest, the power of attorney and the healthcare directive. So at a minimum, do those. Yeah. And healthcare directives are available online. You just go online and type in Georgia Advanced Directive, and 50 different hits come up with the exact same form. So they're very easy documents to have. Power of attorney for business and financial, same sort of thing. They're available. They're readily available. Yeah. So at a minimum, get those. That way, if something happens to you, somebody can take care of you. You slide down a mountain while you're hiking, and you're in the hospital for a few weeks in Tibet. Somebody's got to take care of things for you. So make sure you have the basic documents, and then sort of build from there. And then you tell those people that that's their job. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people name someone, but they don't know that that's their job. Absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah. Make sure the folks back home know that they're in charge. Right. If something happens. Might want to mention that before you and another thing, going back to that, is kids always come into the mix. And I do a lot of travel planning in the early part of the summer. Young couples come in, and we're going on our first trip ever without our kids. They're finally old enough to leave with somebody, and we're going to Europe. Make sure something's in place to care for the kids back here. Georgia has a very good power of attorney that gives us the ability to delegate the authority to care for our kids. Right. So medical, schooling, all of those kind of things. Get a document in place. Make sure that you have guardians named in the event something happens to you. So don't forget those things. Yeah. Good ideas. Brian, thank you for doing this. Absolutely. And if you don't have any estate planning done, now's the time. This is your reminder. Good to get it done. Good to get it done. Sean and Brian can help you. Moore Ingram Johnson Steele. Always contact our office if you need their direct contact information, but I'm sure we'll put that in our show notes as well. We also have a YouTube channel, A Wiser Retirement. Using an online estate planning service versus a local attorney is a video we did. Also, listen to episode 120, Finding the Right Estate Planning Attorney for You. That's on our podcast episode. This is episode 193. Thanks for listening. We keep climbing the podcast charts. If you have a moment, be sure to leave us a 5-star or whatever it is, thumbs up on Apple Podcasts or however you listen to the podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This episode was produced and edited by Ken Hoadley.